blacksmith shop. Here as blacksmiths, we work with iron and steel. It's actually where we get our name from, in that we work with the black metal. The other part of our name referring to how we do the work. A smith being a metal worker who hammers out their work pieces. So blacksmiths, tinsmiths, silversmiths, we all share that quality in our work. Now, today it is our job to produce the ironwork that is needed all throughout the museum. So the hardware for buildings, that's what he's been working on behind me this morning is some nails for building projects in town. But we do all sorts of building hardware, so everything from simple nails to hinges for the doors, even the complicated locks. We'll work on these as well. Currently, our largest building project that we've been focusing on is the Gray School down the street. It's an interesting project because we've actually recently moved this structure, which usually we try to avoid doing. That we've been very proud that we have, well, for a long time we've had 88 original buildings in Williamsburg sitting right where they've always sat. So I will mention not all of them are all that notable of a structure. That, for instance, one of the closest original buildings is an outhouse over there. Well, we now have 89 because we discovered that there was an 18th century building hiding out in modern Williamsburg over near the campus of William and Mary. And not only is it just an 18th century building, but it has quite the significant history. You see, this building housed the first school for African American children in Virginia. The Gray School was established in the 1760s by the Gray Associates. They were a philanthropic group in England, closely associated with the Church of England and concerned about the education for African American children. I believe their main concern was that if these children weren't taught how to read, they couldn't read the Bible, and that was just plain unacceptable. So they funded and established these schools in the colonies. The very first Gray School was established in Philadelphia, and the second one was established here in Williamsburg, though there were many others. Well, it turns out the building was still around. It had been in consistent use for the last 250 years. Most recently, I believe it was faculty offices down at William and Mary. And as any building that has seen consistent use for many years, it saw additions and renovations. The roof line was changed. It got new doors and windows and siding. So at first glance, it didn't look exactly like an 18th century building. But through closer examination and peeling back the layers, we were able to determine it was in fact an 18th century structure. And understanding it to have such a significant history, we agreed with the college to move it here into the historic area, and now we have to set about restoring it back to its appearance as it would have looked when it was in use as a school in the 1760s. So for our part as blacksmiths, this job is going to require several thousand nails, several dozen hinges. Regarding hinges, it's easy to underestimate how many hinges will be needed. As modern folks, we usually just think of the hinges on the doors to the building, which certainly there's a good number of those, but also think of the windows and the window shutters. Properly, each window ought to have 2 shutters, and each shutter gets 2 hinges. So quickly these begin to add up. You also see the shutter dogs that go beside each window shutter to hold them open during the day so they don't blow around in the wind. It will likely need around half a dozen locks for the doors. Has 2 chimneys and 4 fireplaces, so 4 sets of fireplace equipment, things like andirons and fireplace shovels, and many other things besides. So that's just one project of many. On top of that, also say the tooling needed by other workmen, that over this last winter, in preparation for the Gray School project, our carpenters had us make them some shingling hatchets. So while they're up there nailing on the roofing shingles, they have the appropriate tools to do so. So we keep very busy. Now, historically, much of the work here was similar, though they had the additional responsibility here as working as an armory during the Revolutionary War. At that time, you'd see things like gun repair, swords, pistols, bayonets being brought here. They hired 9 boys here during the war just for nail making. Kind of an interesting side of the work because before the war, you'd more often buy English nails. But go to war with England and now you can't get nails. So we need to be able to manufacture those things independently, as it were. Now, before I ramble on for all too long, Do y'all have any questions for me? Anything you're curious about? I wish. I've been a lot of school groups this morning, so. And historically, you did see workmen drinking some sort of libations on the job. It wasn't unheard of. Though I think sometimes they seemed like worse drunkards than they actually were. That the common sort of beer drunk among workmen was small beer, as they called it, which we don't really have around anymore, but it was a very low alcohol content beer. So it's less there to get you drunk and more for a little bit of extra calories and to taste something that isn't water. You can also be sure that it's going to be good for you and not bad, which a lot of the water, especially here in Williamsburg, had a bad reputation for being of poor quality. So through the brewing process, that water would be improved. You see small beer being drunk. You also sometimes see grog being drunk. I've seen accounts of houses in town serving grog when they didn't have ale at hand. And grog is, at its base, just some sort of hard liquor mixed with water. It's not great, but if you've got bad water, it helps the water go down. We've got a record of, at one point, the owner of this shop buys a barrel of apple brandy for the workmen. We presume to be added to water. So we're still trying to sell our boss on that one. Yeah.